This house is mine now, and around here, old ladies stay quiet. That was exactly what my daughter-in-law threw in my face, right in front of my neighbors, standing at the gate of my own home. The house that I built with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, sacrifice after sacrifice. Mrs. Higgins, who was sweeping her driveway across the street, stopped dead in her tracks, scandalized. Brenda, who was walking by with her grocery bags, pretended she didn't hear a thing and walked faster, keeping her head down. But everyone heard it. The whole neighborhood heard it. The sun was beating down hard that afternoon, burning my skin and my pride. Stephanie had her phone in her hand, a crooked smirk on the corner of her lips, as if she had just won the lottery or a high-stakes bet. My son David, standing right next to her, didn't say a single word. He simply looked away at the ground, like a coward. I stood there, planted firmly. On the outside, solid as a rock. On the inside, I felt every word like a dry punch to the gut. I looked at the iron gate I had paid to install myself. I looked at the garden I still water religiously every single day. Everything there had my sweat, my history soaked into the walls. You know that moment when you realize that everything you've done in your life simply stopped mattering? I worked for 43 years as a seamstress, hunched over my machine. I raised my son alone after my husband, Frank, passed away. I paid for his schools, the doctors, his college tuition. I never allowed him to lack for anything, not a hot meal nor a notebook. But in that moment, standing at the door of my own house, I was nothing more than an old woman who was in the way. What Stephanie didn't know is that 3 weeks later, when her hands opened that certified letter, that arrogant little smile would be wiped off her face forever, and my son would understand, though far too late, who he had thrown away like common trash. Stay with me until the end, because this turnaround is something you will never forget. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I am 70 years old, and this house, which Stephanie claims is hers, I started building when I was barely 28. Back then, my husband Frank and I had just gotten married. He was a construction worker, a bricklayer with strong hands. I was a seamstress. We bought this lot at the edge of the suburbs. It was nothing but weeds, tall grass, and dirt. There was no pavement. The power went out all the time, but it was our piece of land. We raised this house little by little, with infinite patience and hard effort. Weekends, holidays, every spare hour we had. I carried the cinder blocks. I mixed the cement. I held the beams while Frank hammered. My hands would get covered in blisters. Sometimes they bled, but I never complained. When David was born, the house didn't even have siding on the walls yet. We lived in just one room, with a borrowed hot plate and a double bed where all 3 of us slept, cramped but warm. But it was our home, and we were immensely happy. Frank died when David was only 7 years old. A damn accident on the job site. He fell from a high scaffold. He didn't even have time to say goodbye to us. That was when the world came crashing down on me, and everything became heavier. I was left completely alone with a small child, a half-finished house, and not a dime in savings at the bank. The workers' compensation money barely covered a decent funeral and paid off the debts we had. So I had to double the load. I became both father and mother. I started sewing late into the night until dawn. I hemmed pants, fixed dresses, embroidered entire wedding trousseaux. I took any job that came my way. There were times when I slept 3 hours a night, because during the day, I also cleaned houses for wealthy families to make ends meet. David grew up seeing all of this. He did his homework at the kitchen table while the hum of my sewing machine kept him company. Often, he would fall asleep right there, his little head resting on his notebook, and I would carry him to bed in my arms. I never let him go without. He had his school supplies, crisp uniforms, good shoes on his feet. Even if I had to eat just rice and eggs for the entire month so he would have what he needed. When he wanted to take an SAT prep course to get into college, I sold the antique sewing machine that had belonged to my mother. It was the only thing of sentimental value I had kept, but I sold it without a second thought, because my son's dream was far bigger than my nostalgia. He got in. He studied business administration. He graduated with honors. He got a good job at a corporation. And I felt so proud that I cried alone in the kitchen, clutching his graduation invitation against my chest. The relationship between David and me had always been good. He respected me. He visited frequently. He brought groceries for the month without me asking. We talked about life. We laughed together. He always told me, "Mom, everything I am, I owe to you. You made me who I am." And I believed him. I believed him with all my heart, until he met Stephanie. At first, she seemed like a polite young woman, pretty, elegant. She worked at a bank, had her own car, lived alone. David was hopelessly in love. I saw it in the sparkle in his eyes. She came here to the house, smiled, complimented my cooking. She said I was a warrior woman, that she admired my story of struggle. I even thought, what a blessing that my son found someone like this. They got married in a rented hall. It was a simple party, but very emotional. I paid for her wedding dress. It was my gift to her. I wanted to do it from the heart. She thanked me, hugged me tight, and called me Mom. But things started to change, slowly and silently. First, it was the move. They had leased an apartment, but there was an issue with the lease agreement at the last minute. Stephanie suggested they come live with me just for a few months until we get organized. I accepted immediately. He was my son. How could I not help them? Except the months turned into years, and the house stopped being mine without me realizing it. In the beginning, it was small details, almost imperceptible. Stephanie reorganized my closets without asking. She moved the furniture around to her taste. She threw away old pots I still used and cherished into the trash. I tried not to make a big deal out of it to keep the peace. But then the atmosphere started to get heavier. She began treating me as if I were the maid in my own home. "Margaret, wash those dishes sitting there. I'm dead tired." It wasn't a polite request. It was a direct order. And she said it sitting on the sofa, watching TV, while I had just walked in from the grocery store, carrying heavy bags. My son was right there, next to her, and he said nothing. I washed the dishes, in silence. There was a day when she called me Mrs. Sullivan in front of her friends with a sneering tone, as if I were the cleaning lady. They laughed, a bit awkwardly. I pretended I didn't hear, but I heard every syllable. Stephanie started deciding everything in the house, what we were going to have for lunch, what time I could use the living room. She put a parental code on the cable TV. She said it was to save energy, and that I spent all day watching gossip shows. I had paid for that TV, the installation. Everything was mine, but I said nothing. Because David always came home tired, always stressed, and I didn't want to be a burden or create problems in his marriage. Then came Mother's Day. They organized a lunch here at the house. They invited Stephanie's whole family, her parents, her sister, the brother-in-law, the nephews. Everyone came. I thought it was going to be a beautiful day, a family celebration. I set the table with my best tablecloth. I helped cook from dawn. I put on my Sunday best. But when it was time to sit at the table, there was no place for me. There were chairs for everyone, except for me. Stephanie looked at me with that coldness of hers and said, "Oh, Margaret, just sit over there in the kitchen. Go on. We're too squeezed in here." In the kitchen, on Mother's Day, in my own house. I sat down. I ate alone, listening to the laughter coming from the dining room. David didn't come to get me. He didn't even notice. It was on that precise day that something broke inside me forever. After that, my things started to disappear. The crochet blanket I had knitted when David was a baby. Gone. I asked where it was. Stephanie told me it was old, full of dust, and that she had thrown it in the trash. "It was moth-eaten, Margaret. Relax. It was an old rag." That blanket I had made with yarn I bought little by little, saving up for months. Every stitch, every square, represented a night spent awake, sewing and caring for my son when he had a fever. And she had thrown it away like garbage. My wedding portrait with Frank, which always sat on the living room shelf, also vanished. In its place, she put a giant photo of her wedding with David. I searched for my portrait all over the house. I found it thrown in a box in the storage room, along with my other things, as if I were part of the past, as if I no longer belonged in that place. I picked up the portrait, wiped off the dust, and put it away in my bedroom. I locked it in my drawer. That was when I started to realize I needed to protect myself. I started paying attention to everything, to every detail. Stephanie controlled the household money. She paid the bills. She did the grocery shopping. My son deposited his entire paycheck into their joint account. And I lived there on charity. My Social Security check came every month, $1,400. I gave them $500 to help with expenses. Stephanie asked me for it. She said it was only fair, since I lived there and used utilities. Lived there. In the house I built. I started writing everything down, in an old notebook, hidden under my mattress. Date, amount, reason for what I gave them. I kept every receipt. Everything. I also started listening closely to their conversations. Stephanie spoke in a low voice with David, but I could hear. She told him I was getting old, senile, that I was in the way, that they needed privacy, that the house was too small for 3 adults. One day, I was walking down the hallway, and I heard her talking on the phone with someone. I can't stand this old woman here anymore, but don't worry, I'm taking care of it. Taking care of it. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. That's when I understood everything. It wasn't just disrespect, it was a plan, and I had to be ready for war. 2 weeks after that conversation I overheard, Stephanie came to talk to me. She was strangely nice. She was smiling. She brought me a hot coffee. She sat at the kitchen table, right next to me, very close. "Margaret, I need to talk to you about something serious." My heart started racing, but I didn't let it show on my face. "Tell me." She took a deep breath, as if she had rehearsed every word in front of the mirror. "Look, you know David and I love you, right? You're his mother. You built all this." I remained silent, waiting for the blow. "But the truth is, we have a serious problem. David has a huge debt on his credit card, a lot of money, and if we don't pay, we're going to get into legal trouble." She paused dramatically. She looked me in the eyes, trying to feign sincerity. "We thought about asking for a bank loan, but they require collateral, and the only thing of value we have is this house." My blood froze in my veins. "Excuse me? It's nothing terrible, Margaret. It's just using the house as equity. We pay the loan back on time every month, and that's it. You won't even feel the difference." She pushed some papers toward me on the table. "I just need your signature here. It's a quick formality." I looked down at the papers. There were a lot of them, full of fine print, complex legal terms. I didn't understand all of it well, but I knew one thing from age and wisdom. Signing papers about your house without understanding is putting a noose around your neck. I need to read this calmly. Her smile tensed up, became rigid. "Margaret, it's urgent. We need to resolve this today before the bank closes." "I'm going to read it. But you don't understand these financial things. It's better if you just trust us. We know what we're doing." I grabbed the papers from the table and stood up from the chair. "I'm going to read it." Stephanie's face changed in a second. The smile vanished. She crossed her arms, defiant. "Don't you trust your own son?" "I do, but I need to understand what I'm signing my name to." She huffed, indignant. She stood up abruptly from the chair. She stormed out of the kitchen, her heels clicking, without saying another word. That night, I read every line of those documents with a magnifying glass. And it wasn't just a loan. There was a hidden clause that would transfer the title of the property to a trust in David and Stephanie's names. There was another that said in case of a single missed payment, the house would be sold to settle the debt. And there was a deadline. If I signed that, in 6 months the house wouldn't be mine anymore. It would be theirs, legally. I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. The next day, I said nothing, but I left the house very early. I went to the county clerk's office and the recorder of deeds. I asked for an updated copy of the house deed. It cost a few dollars, but I paid them gladly. I kept the original document with me, under lock and key in my room. Then I went to the bank. I asked for a full statement of my banking activity for the last few years. I saw that over the last 8 months, I had transferred almost $4,000 to Stephanie's account. I asked the manager to print everything for me. Every deposit, every transfer. I guarded it all like a treasure. I also started photographing everything I saw. With the old smartphone David had passed down to me when he bought a new one. I took pictures of the papers Stephanie wanted me to sign. I photographed my notes in the notebook. I photographed the utility bill receipts. Stephanie came back to pressure me. "So, Margaret, have you decided?" "I'm still thinking about it." She didn't like my answer at all. "You know we could lose everything, right? If David doesn't pay this debt, they'll garnish his wages. They'll come here and take the furniture. I'm still thinking about it. She looked at me with suppressed rage. She turned her back and walked away. That week, I started hearing loud arguments between her and David. Her voice was high-pitched, irritated. Your mother doesn't want to help us. She only thinks about herself. We need this house, David. My son tried to calm her down, whispering. But his voice sounded weak, tired. I realized he was being manipulated like a puppet, that she was using him, and he, blinded by love or habit, didn't see it. There was a day when Stephanie called me selfish, right to my face. You are selfish, Margaret. Your son desperately needs you, and you turn your back on him. I took a deep breath so I wouldn't scream. I stared her straight in the eyes. I built this house with my bleeding hands. No one is taking it from me. She let out a bitter, dry laugh. We'll see about that. That's when I knew for sure. It wasn't a request for help. It was a deadly trap, and I wasn't going to fall into it. David's birthday was that Saturday. He was turning 43. Stephanie organized a big backyard BBQ. She invited her friends, colleagues from the bank, some neighbors. There were a lot of people. Loud music, beer in the cooler, meat on the grill. I helped set everything up from the morning. I swept the patio, washed the cups, prepared the salads and dips. Stephanie didn't even thank me. She just gave orders, pointing her finger. When the guests started arriving, I put on simple clothes and stayed in a corner. Quiet, just observing. David was happy. He was chatting with everyone, laughing out loud, hugging his buddies. It was good to see him like that, so alive. It had been a long time since I had seen my son so relaxed. I ate a piece of burger, drank a soda. I sat on a plastic chair near the main table. Mrs. Higgins and Brenda, my neighbors forever, came to say hello. We were chatting quietly about simple things in life, the weather, grocery prices, health. That was when Stephanie approached. She was a little tipsy. She had had too much to drink. Her eyes were shining in a strange, malicious way. Margaret, can you go inside and get more ice? We're out. I made a move to get up. But Brenda stopped me and said, Leave it. I'll go with her. I'll help carry the bag. Stephanie laughed, a loud, strident laugh. She drew everyone's attention. No need, Brenda. Margaret is used to serving. After all, she lives here on charity, so she has to earn her keep, right? The entire backyard fell into a sepulchral silence. The music kept playing, but no one was speaking anymore. I felt everyone's eyes pinned on me like needles. Mrs. Higgins lowered her head in secondhand embarrassment. Brenda stood paralyzed, not knowing what to say. I looked at David. He was on the other side of the yard, a beer in his hand. He had heard everything, but he looked away. He played dumb and pretended he was talking to someone else. Stephanie continued, even louder, so everyone could hear well. Seriously, guys. Sometimes I think she forgets this house isn't hers anymore. We pay for everything here. She just sits there complaining about life. My chest tightened. My throat closed up. I said nothing. I just stood up from the chair. Slowly, I looked Stephanie straight in the eyes. She smiled, defiant, as if she had won a trophy. I walked across the entire yard, moving through the crowd. No one spoke to me. No one stopped me. I went into the house. I went to my room. I closed the door gently. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the white wall. Outside, the music turned up again. The laughter returned, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Because in that moment, in the absolute silence of my room, while the party went on without me, I made the most important decision of my life. I wasn't going to take this for 1 second more. I was going to act. I stayed locked in that room for the rest of the night. The party went on until late. I could hear the voices, the toasts, the bass of the music vibrating through the walls. It seemed like it was happening in another world, far away from me. When everyone left, the house fell silent. I heard Stephanie and David going upstairs to sleep. They didn't even knock on my door to see if I was okay. I lay on the bed, still dressed. I looked at the ceiling, and I cried. I cried softly, muffling the sound in the pillow, because I didn't want to give them the pleasure of hearing me. But I cried for real. With that pain that tears you apart from the inside, that squeezes your chest and stops you from breathing right. I thought about everything. The years spent raising those walls. The nights spent sewing until dawn to pay the bills. The day I sold my mother's machine to pay for David's tuition. I thought about Frank, how sad he would be if he saw his son treating me this way. I thought about how many times I had swallowed my pride, the humiliations, the sharp words. All because I didn't want to be a burden, because I thought it was better to stay quiet to keep the peace, because I was terrified of losing my son. But I had already lost him, and I couldn't pretend otherwise anymore. I got out of bed at dawn, before the sun came up. I turned on the small lamp. I dried my tears. I looked for an old shoebox I had kept in the back of the closet. I emptied it, and I started gathering my arsenal. First, the deed to the house, the original. In my name, recorded in 1978, 48 years ago, Frank and me, the irrefutable proof that this house was mine. Next, the payment receipts, electricity, water, property taxes, everything in my name, everything paid by me for years. I am the kind of person who keeps everything. Old receipts, old bills, bank statements. I looked for the notebook where I noted down every dollar I gave to Stephanie. $500 a month. For 8 months. $4,000 total. I had it all written down. Date, amount, reason. I gathered the bank statements the manager had printed for me, the transfers, the evidence. I grabbed my phone. I reviewed the photos I had taken of the fraudulent papers Stephanie wanted me to sign, the shady loan contract, the hidden clauses, the disguised transfer of title. I put everything inside the box. I organized it meticulously. I separated it by categories. Property documents in one envelope, financial receipts in another. The printed photos I had developed at the pharmacy in a third. I sat on the bed with the box on my lap, and I started doing the math. 8 months they had been living here like parasites after getting married. The monthly cash I gave them, plus the utilities I kept paying religiously even though they lived here. The electricity that doubled, the water that tripled, the grocery bill that skyrocketed. I calculated that at a minimum I had spent another $3,000 extra on them. Over $7,000 total. Not counting the emotional wear and tear, not counting the humiliations, not counting what has no price. But I wasn't doing this for the money. I was doing it because I needed to get my dignity back. I took a piece of paper and a pen. I started writing the names of the people who had seen something. Mrs. Higgins, Brenda, Stephanie's friends who were there the day she called me Mrs. Sullivan with contempt. The neighbors who were witnesses at the BBQ. Witnesses. I had plenty of witnesses. I closed the box. I stored it under the bed, way in the back, hidden. I lay down again. But this time I didn't cry, because now I had a plan. And Monday morning, I was going to start executing it without mercy. For the first time in months, I managed to fall asleep. Monday morning, I left the house with the first rays of sun. I put the box inside a discreet tote bag. Stephanie was still sleeping off her hangover. David had already left for work. I took the bus downtown. I got off in front of the courthouse. It had been years since I had set foot in that part of town. I had the address written on a crumpled piece of paper. Main Street, number 232, second floor. Attorney Michael Ross. Michael was the son of a great friend of mine who passed away. I had known him since he was in diapers. He played with David when they were kids running in the street. Then he grew up, went to law school, became a respected lawyer. We had lost touch, but I knew his office was there. I walked up the stairs slowly. I knocked on the door. A young receptionist greeted me. She asked if I had an appointment. I told her no, but that it was a matter of life and death. She asked me to wait a moment. I sat on a plastic chair, clutching the bag against my chest. My heart was beating a mile a minute. After about 20 minutes, the door opened, and Michael appeared. He had aged, of course. Gray hair, reading glasses, an impeccable navy blue suit. But the smile was the same as that mischievous little boy. "Mrs. Sullivan?" I jumped up. "Hello, Michael." He hugged me, a strong, sincere hug. One of those hugs that tell you the person is truly happy to see you alive. What a wonderful surprise. Come in, please." We went into his office. A small room but filled with books. A desk cluttered with files. An old computer humming. He offered me coffee. I accepted to calm my nerves. We chatted a bit about small talk. He asked about David, about life, about my health. I answered the bare minimum, until he noticed my anxiety. "Mrs. Sullivan, you came here for something important, didn't you?" I took a deep breath. I did. And it's serious, Michael. I put the bag on his desk. I took out the box. I opened it. I need your help. I told him everything, without leaving out a single detail, from the beginning. Stephanie, the daily humiliations, the attempt to make me sign the papers blindly, the public shame at the birthday party, everything. Michael's face grew serious, very serious. His expression changed. He took the documents. He read them with clinical attention. The deed, the receipts, the notebook with my notes, the photos of the documents Stephanie wanted me to sign. He remained silent for several long minutes, just reading and turning pages. When he finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me fixedly. Mrs. Sullivan, you know this is attempted fraud, right? My heart skipped a beat. Excuse me? These papers she wanted you to sign. It wasn't just a loan. It was a quitclaim deed disguised within a lien. If you had signed, in less than 6 months the house would have transferred to their name, and you would have ended up on the street. I felt the blood drain from my face. And there is more. He typed something on his computer. He checked some data. He turned the screen toward me. I checked the credit bureau reports. There is a fraud alert under your name. Someone tried to use your social security number to open an online bank account. It wasn't approved because the identity verification failed, but the attempt is on record. What does that mean? That someone tried to steal your identity to open accounts in your name. My voice wouldn't come out. I just looked at him with horror. Mrs. Sullivan, this is serious. Very serious. You are a victim of elder financial abuse and emotional distress, and we need to act now. He grabbed a yellow legal pad. He started writing furiously. We are going to do the following. First, legally, I am going to file for an immediate eviction. The house is yours. The deed is sacred. They are there without paying rent, without a lease, without your consent. Legally, they are squatters. He paused. He looked at me to make sure I understood. I can get them out of there. But the normal process takes about 30 or 40 days. Okay. Second, we are going to file a police report for attempted fraud and identity theft. That protects you, and it leaves a dangerous legal precedent for them. I nodded. Third, we need to shield your assets. I'm going to file a lis pendens or a protective order on the title. No one will be able to sell or mortgage that house without a judge's order. Not you, not anyone. Can we do that? We can, and I will do it today. He noted a few more things. Now, socially, do you have witnesses to the mistreatment? I do. My neighbors. People who were at the BBQ. Perfect. I will need you to ask them to sign a simple affidavit. Nothing too formal, just stating what they saw and heard, with date and signature. I can get that. And emotionally, Mrs. Sullivan, he leaned over the desk, getting closer to me. You are going to have to be made of steel, because when we drop the bomb, it's going to get ugly. Your son is going to turn against you. Stephanie is going to make a scene fit for a soap opera. They will try to manipulate you into giving up. They will tell you that you're crazy, that you're exaggerating, that you will regret it. I know. Are you sure you want to proceed? I looked him in the eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt no doubt. I am absolutely certain. I can't take it anymore, Michael. I worked my whole life to have this roof. No one is taking it from me. Not my son. Not my son's wife. No one. He smiled. A sad smile, but full of respect. Then let's get to work. It took him 3 weeks to get everything ready. During those 3 weeks, I continued living under the same roof as Stephanie, doing the same routines, as if nothing had changed in the universe. But inside, I was a different woman. I no longer responded to her provocations. When she ordered me to do something, I did it, without complaining, without arguing, in absolute silence. She thought she had finally broken my spirit, but I was just sharpening my knife. Michael got all the signatures from the witnesses. Mrs. Higgins signed without hesitation. Brenda, too. 2 of Stephanie's friends who were at the BBQ also signed. They came to my house when she wasn't there. They asked for my forgiveness. They said they were ashamed to have witnessed that without doing anything, that it wasn't humane. I thanked them and kept their statements. The police report was filed. The eviction lawsuit was accepted by the court. The freeze on the deed was executed. Everything was ready. Michael called me Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Sullivan, the court order comes out tomorrow. A process server, accompanied by a sheriff's deputy, will come to your house at 10 in the morning sharp. They will deliver the notice to vacate. They will have 72 hours to leave. My heart almost stopped. 72 hours? Yes, 3 days. It's the legal deadline. And if they don't leave, then the sheriff removes them by force. I remained silent, processing the image. Mrs. Sullivan, do you want me to be there tomorrow? No, I need to do this alone. Are you sure? Sure. I hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of my bed. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs. Tomorrow everything was going to change. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I lay there watching the shadows on the ceiling, thinking, replaying the script in my head, what I was going to say, how I was going to react, what David was going to scream, what poison Stephanie was going to spit. I rehearsed every step mentally, every gesture. At dawn, I got up. I took a shower. I got dressed like I was going to church. I put on simple but dignified clothes, clean trousers, a crisp white blouse, comfortable shoes. I combed my hair carefully. I put on a little pale pink lipstick. I looked in the mirror. That woman looked different, firmer, more whole. She was no longer the Margaret who endured in silence in the corner. She was the Margaret who was going to fight for her castle. I went down to the kitchen. I made black coffee. I sat at the table. I drank it slowly, savoring the moment. Stephanie was still sleeping. David had left early for the office. He wouldn't be home when Justice arrived. Just her. Better that way. 9:40 in the morning. I was sitting on the living room sofa, waiting. My heart was beating in my throat. My hands were sweating cold, but I wasn't afraid. I was ready. 9:55. I heard the sound of the gate, firm steps on the driveway. I stood up. I went to the window. I saw the process server, a woman in a uniform, a folder in hand. She rang the doorbell. I opened the door. Good morning. Are you Mrs. Margaret Sullivan? That's me. I have a judicial notification to deliver to occupants David Sullivan and Stephanie Miller. Are they present? David isn't, but Stephanie is upstairs. The server entered. I closed the door behind her. It was at that precise moment that Stephanie came down the stairs. In a bathrobe, messy hair, the face of a rough morning. She looked at the unknown woman. Then she looked at me. Who is this woman? I didn't answer her. The server introduced herself with an authoritative voice. Good morning. I am a process server for the county court. I have a notification for you. She handed her the white envelope. Stephanie took it with suspicion. She opened it. She started reading, and her face lost its color until it became as white as the paper. Stephanie read the document once, twice, 3 times. Her hands started shaking visibly. What is this? Her voice came out thin, like a thread. The server replied with professional calm. It is a notice to vacate regarding an unlawful detainer lawsuit. You and Mr. David Sullivan have 72 hours to vacate the premises. In case of non-compliance, the sheriff's department will proceed with a forced eviction. Eviction? But this house. She looked at me, eyes wide. Did you do this? I held her gaze without blinking. I did. Are you crazy? You can't do this to us. Your son lives here? My son lives here as a favor, in my house, and the favor ended today. She took an aggressive step toward me. Her face turned red with fury. You don't have the guts. You are a weak old woman who can't stand being alone. You need us to survive. The server intervened, stepping forward. Ma'am, please. The notification has been served. From this moment on, any act of hostility toward the homeowner can be considered a criminal offense. I recommend you remain calm. Stephanie looked at the server with hate, then at me. She tore the paper into pieces and threw it on the floor. I am not leaving here. This house is mine. I've lived here for 2 years. I have rights. I bent down calmly. I picked up the pieces of paper from the floor. I gathered them in my hand. Tearing it up changes nothing, girl. The notification is recorded as served. There is a copy at the courthouse. She started crying, but it wasn't tears of sadness. It was pure rage. I'm calling David. He won't let you do this madness. Call him. She grabbed her cell phone. She dialed the number. She screamed into the phone like a maniac. David, come home right now. Your mother has gone crazy. She sent the courts to the house. She wants to kick us out on the street. Come now. She hung up. She looked at me with venom in her eyes. You are going to regret this until your dying breath. The server took her leave formally. She left. I heard the gate close. Stephanie and I were left alone in the living room. She wouldn't stop pacing from one side to the other like a caged animal. She was pulling her hair. She was biting her nails. She was breathing heavily. You don't know what you just did. You have no idea. I sat on the sofa. I crossed my hands in my lap, calm. I know exactly what I did. Your son will never speak to you again. You will die alone and bitter. Maybe, but I will die in my house. Half an hour later, David arrived. He walked through the door, his face pale and distorted, sweating, nervous. Mom, what is this story? I stood up. I looked at him. Sit down, David. I'm not sitting down. Explain to me what the hell you did. Sit down. Something in my tone of voice, so cold and hard, stopped him dead. He looked at Stephanie, then at me. He sat on the edge of the armchair. I took a deep breath. David, this house is mine. I built it with my sweat and your father's sweat. I raised you here. I educated you here. I paid for everything here. Everything you are started within these walls. I know that, Mom, but let me finish. He closed his mouth. 2 years ago, you and Stephanie came to live here. I accepted because you are my son, because I love you, and because I thought it would be temporary. I paused to let the words weigh heavy, but it wasn't. I grabbed the box that was hidden under the coffee table. I put it on my lap. During this time, I was humiliated, disrespected, treated like the maid, as if I were worthless, as if I were a burden in my own home. Mom, it's not like that. It is like that, David. It is exactly like that. I opened the box. I took out the notebook. Look at this. 8 months of notes. $500 a month that I gave to Stephanie in cash to help with expenses of my own house. He took the notebook hesitantly. He turned the pages. I didn't know this. You didn't want to know. I took out the utility receipts. Here, electric bills, water, taxes, everything in my name. Everything paid from my pocket. Even with you two living here consuming double. He looked at the papers. He said nothing. I took out the printed photos. And this. The papers your wife wanted me to sign. His expression turned from confusion to fear. What papers? Ask her. He turned to Stephanie. What papers are these, Stephanie? She turned pale as a ghost. It was just a loan to pay off the cards. It wasn't just a loan. I handed him the photos. I pointed a finger at the clauses. It was a disguised transfer of ownership. If I had signed that, in 6 months, this house would have passed to your names, and I would have ended up on the street with nothing. David read, reread. His hand was shaking violently. Stephanie, is this true? She didn't answer. She lowered her head. Stephanie, I just wanted to secure our future. She is old, David. Any day now she dies. The house was going to come to you anyway. He closed his eyes tight. He crumpled the papers in his fist. I continued, relentless. And there is more. I took out the last document, the credit report. Someone tried to open a bank account in my name, using my documents. The identity verification failed. That's why they couldn't. But the fraud attempt is on record. I gave him the paper. Do you know who did this, David? He looked at the document. Then he looked at Stephanie with disbelief. She burst into tears for real this time. I needed the money. We were drowning in debt. I didn't have a choice. David jumped up from the armchair. He wiped his hand over his face, desperate. You tried to steal from my mother? It wasn't stealing. I just wanted... You tried to steal from my mother. He screamed so loud his voice echoed through the whole house. I remained motionless, just observing the disaster. He turned to me. Mom, I didn't know. I swear on my life I knew nothing about this. You knew she humiliated me daily. You saw it, you heard it, but you did nothing to defend me. I thought it was just... I didn't think it would go this far. You didn't want to think. He lowered his head, defeated. I stood up. I stood in front of him, looking at him from my moral high ground. David, you have 72 hours to leave this house. You and her. You can take your things, but the house stays with me. Mom, there is no mom today. It's over. He tried to take my hand. I pulled away abruptly. I am going to proceed with the criminal charges against her for attempted fraud. My lawyer has already documented everything, the report, the evidence, the witnesses. Stephanie fell to her knees on the floor, begging. Margaret, please, I have a son. We have nowhere to go. I looked at her one last time with pity and contempt. You should have thought of that before trying to steal a house from a defenseless old woman. I took my box. I walked to my room with my head held high. I closed the door calmly. I leaned my back against the wood. I closed my eyes. Outside, I heard the screams, the hysterical crying, the infernal argument. But in here, for the first time in 2 years, I felt absolute peace. They left on the second day. They didn't wait for the 72 hours. Saturday morning, a moving truck parked in front of the house. They loaded their furniture, their clothes, their misery. I stayed in my room. I didn't go down. I didn't help load anything. I didn't say goodbye. Only when the truck drove off and I heard the gate close did I come out. The house was empty, silent. Some rooms were emptier than before, but it was clean. It was mine again. I walked through the living room, through the kitchen, through the backyard. I touched the walls with my palms. I looked out the windows. I breathed deeply. For the first time in years, I felt like the air was entering my lungs pure. 2 weeks later, Michael called me. Mrs. Sullivan, Stephanie accepted an out-of-court settlement. She is going to pay damages for emotional distress, $5,000, and she signed a restraining order. She can never come near you again. And the criminal charges? Dropped. With the agreement and her signed confession, there won't be a criminal trial. But the record stays. If she tries anything again, she goes straight to jail. And David. Silence on the other end of the line. He didn't sign anything. He wasn't directly involved in the financial crimes. But he hasn't shown up around here. I thanked him. I hung up. I stood staring at the landline phone, waiting for it to ring, for him to send a text, for him to show up at the door. But he didn't appear. The first few weeks were hard. I woke up in the middle of the night, and the silence of the house weighed on me. I looked at the room that had been David's, and felt a knot in my chest. There were nights when I cried from loneliness. There were days when I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I had done the right thing. But then I looked at the deed to the house, framed again on the living room wall. I saw my name there, and I remembered. I remembered the public humiliation, the cruel words, the contempt in their eyes, the attempt to rob me of my life's effort, and I knew I had done the only thing I could do. Mrs. Higgins and Brenda started coming over for coffee in the afternoons. We sat on the porch, we talked, we laughed. They told me about their grandkids, their lives. I told them about mine. For the first time, I had time to talk without rushing, time to laugh without fear, time to live. I started sewing again, not for money, but because I liked creating. I made small pieces, hand-embroidered napkins, tablecloths. I sold some at the neighborhood flea market on Sundays. Others, I gave away to whomever I wanted. The house became lighter. I rearranged the furniture to erase their traces. I planted new flowers in the garden. I painted the living room wall a soft yellow, full of light. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see it that way. And for the first time, I could do whatever I wanted. 3 months later, David showed up. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was watering my plants in the garden. I heard the doorbell. When I opened the gate, he was there, thinner, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, hands in his pockets. Hi, Mom. I stood there holding the garden hose. Hi. Awkward silence. Can I come in? I opened the gate. He entered. We went to the living room. We sat down, one on each sofa, like two strangers who know each other from another life. How are you? I'm fine. More silence. Mom, I came here to apologize. I said nothing. I just listened. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I let Stephanie treat you like dirt. I didn't see what she was doing, or I saw it and didn't want to believe it. I don't know, but I failed. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat to keep from crying. I left her. I couldn't do it anymore. After everything that happened, I saw who she really was, and I saw what I had become with her. He lowered his head, ashamed. I don't expect you to forgive me today. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of motherhood. David, you are my son, and I love you. That will never change, even if the world falls apart. He raised his head. His eyes were full of tears. But I cannot let you into my life again as if nothing happened here. I know. You hurt me deeply. You saw me being humiliated, and you didn't lift a finger. You chose her, and I had to choose myself to survive. I know, Mom. If you want to rebuild something between us, it will be slow, with respect, with clear boundaries. And you are going to have to prove that you changed, not with pretty words, with actions. He nodded repeatedly. I will prove it. I promise. Today, 6 months later, we talk. It's not like before. Maybe it never will be again. But we talk on the phone once a week. He stops by here on a Sunday every now and then. He has a quick coffee. We talk about simple things. He doesn't live here, and he will never live here again. This house is mine, and it will remain so until my last day. I learned a valuable lesson in this whole story. We teach people how to treat us. When we accept disrespect in silence, we are saying it is okay, but it is not okay. It is not okay to be humiliated in your own home. It is not okay to be treated as if you have no value or voice. It is not okay to surrender your dignity just because you are afraid of being alone. I almost lost everything. My house, my peace of mind, myself. But I didn't lose, because I decided to fight. And if you are going through something similar, if you are being disrespected, humiliated, erased, listen well to what I tell you. You deserve better. You have always deserved better. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter who is on the other side. It doesn't matter if it's your son, your daughter, your son-in-law, or your daughter-in-law. No one has the divine right to trample on your dignity, and you have every right to protect yourself, to say no, to fight for what is yours by right. It might hurt at first. It might be hard. It might feel lonely at the beginning. But in the end, when you look around and realize that this space is yours, that this peace is yours, that this life belongs to you, you will understand that every tear was worth it. Because dignity is not negotiable. And to start over, there is no age limit. If this story touched your heart, comment down below which city you are listening from. And stay with me for the next videos that will appear on your screen. Someone might need to hear this today.